Good day, everybody. So today I'm going to explain to you the intricate connection between three theories, namely the polyvagal theory of Stephen Porges, the river of life model or the stream of life model by Peter Levine, and ego state theory or parts theory, and how different ego states can develop as part of the personality and as a reaction to trauma. Now let's start with the river of life or the stream of life model by Peter Levine. I have added some information so just to let you know that you might see slight differences in his original explanation and my explanation. So let's assume that this graph here, or this picture that I've drawn here, represents your personality. And here is your birth. This is the entire lifespan, or represents the entire lifespan, and there's death. And the river, these are the banks of the river of life. And the river banks represent your ego boundaries, it represents your resilience, and we refer to it commonly as your window of tolerance. How much stress can you handle? What happens to you after you've had traumatic experiences? And in this river, here the water flows. If the water is flowing well, then we have what we call flow. And this represents the different goals of psychotherapy and also of ego state therapy. We refer to it commonly as the flow chain. So what does it mean? It means that if your water runs properly, you would show some self-efficacy. You would be efficient, you would be integrated. Therefore, we also say integration is a goal. And you will feel contained. Containment refers to feeling safe and secure. You would demonstrate coherence or balance in your life. And you will show well-being or experience well-being. You will show and demonstrate flexibility, attunement to other people, and you would be able to self-regulate. So, altogether we can say the goals of psychotherapy are multiple, but I have written down 9 major goals of psychotherapy or of ego state therapy, as I will refer to it later on again. So what do we mean by self-regulation? And I've written it up on this side. We call it the self-regulators. And I've started from the bottom to the top, and there's a reason why I've started from the top to explaining it to the top, because it's connected to brain functioning and neuroplasticity. But I will explain it later. Let's start here. One of the first self-regulators would be your body, to observe your client's body, how he goes by in controlling his body, how does he present his body, what does he radiate. Secondly, the felt sense of the client. When I speak about felt sense, I actually mean how do you experience your body in relation to your environment? For instance, if I close my eyes and I move my hand up and down, will I be able to know that my hand is next to my ear? Can I anticipate a movement in my body in relation to my external environment? Also commonly known as proprioception. Right. Then the third one, your emotions. What do you demonstrate regarding your emotions? Do you have your emotions under control? Your behavior, your relationships. Then number 6, your impressions. When I speak about impressions, I mean exterioception, as we will refer to it, meaning what comes from outside, the role of the senses. And what pictures do you have in your mind? Do you have healthy pictures? Do you have healthy bodily sensations? And then comes your cognition or your thought process. And do you show insight? Is your thought process coherent? So those 7 represent your so-called self-regulators. And in this way, we can see if a client is capable of regulating themselves. So to summarize here, we have your 9 goals of psychotherapy, and we have the 7 self-regulators. These self-regulators and the goals of psychotherapy are obviously connected to each other, meaning if you can self-regulate, you will demonstrate flow and self-efficacy, containment and coherence, etc. If something goes wrong here, it would immediately have an effect on your self-regulators. Right. Now, Levine says this all has to do with your sympathetic nervous system, meaning that your sympathetic nervous system consists of 2 parts. Your sympathetic nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, consists of 2 parts, your sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. What does it mean? It means when we speak about your sympathetic nervous system, are you activated? Are you action orientated? If I want to stand up, for instance, I need my sympathetic nervous system to get me into action. And then the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for relaxation, calming down. I commonly refer to your sympathetic nervous system as accelerating, the body system accelerating you, and your parasympathetic nervous system is the brake. Now, when we have a stress situation, we will have a small break in the riverbank, and we would have the water flowing out here and really going into this direction, so meaning that you go out of your window of tolerance, your ego boundaries are really extended and are under pressure, but when you calm down and you come back into your river of life, then you experience flow again. Let me give an example. Let's say I'm going to work today and I'm experiencing some stress at work. We have a slight disagreement between myself and my boss, and I feel stressed out. But when I come home tonight, I feel relaxed again, I calm down, I go to the gym, and my body changes, my self-regulators give me indications that I'm back in my river of life and I'm experiencing flow again. But let's assume I start experiencing stress more and more at work, and my sympathetic nervous system is actually aroused to such an extent that there's a break in the riverbank, and I start struggling to get back into my river of life. There's tension at work, there is friction between me and my superiors, and I just cannot seem to come back into my river of life. So my whole working environment is becoming, or I'm experiencing it as a dangerous situation. And I'm starting to really experience some trauma at work. We call it, I am moving into a trauma vortex. And I experience sympathetic arousal. I'm not near my river of life. I'm completely out of the river of life. And then we say that you're experiencing mobilization and activation. But not to the extent that you can move back into your river of life. You are really moving around in a kind of a trauma vortex that starts to develop here. So, interesting is that your autonomic nervous system actually has a first way out of the experience by activating you and mobilizing you. We refer to it commonly as the amygdalic root, where we experience a fight or flight reaction. So we tense, we worked up, we agitated, and there are various symptoms. Symptoms such as hyperarousal, avoidance behavior, hypertonicity. In other words, my muscles are tense. I'm experiencing agitated depression, emotional flooding, anxiety, fear, panic, and even rage and anger. All symptoms of the amygdalic root or mobilization, activation in the fight-flight response. So I really get stuck here. But there's a second way that your autonomic nervous system can react. Because as the tension rises and there's sympathetic arousal, and you start to experience threat to your life and danger. In other words, the situation at work has become unbearable. And there's so much friction. It's been going on for months and months, and I've been mobbed at work by my superiors. And I start to experience suicidal thoughts. Fight, flight is not enough. I'm starting to show other kinds of symptoms. Then we reach a point where the sympathetic arousal is increasing to such an extent that your autonomic nervous system has a second choice for you, which we call, or I would refer to it as a power failure or outage. And it happens when your life is in danger. So what happens here? Your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system, they're crossing. And as they cross, this power failure or outage is experienced. And this is commonly known as traumatic stress, or what we will refer to as complex trauma, usually happening through repetitive and continuous abuse or trauma, as we would experience, for instance, in sexual abuse. Now, as I said, this is the second way out for your autonomic nervous system. So it's actually much worse than what is happening here. Yeah, you have at mobilization and activation, the first way out, you will have emotional flooding, but yeah, you will have shutdown, complete shutdown. Now, when you reach this stage, it's a way of your parasympathetic nervous system actually protecting you. Protecting you from what? Protecting you from death and psychosis. And when that happens and the shutdown happens, it happens on the parasympathetic level, not on the sympathetic axis, but on the parasympathetic. And that's why I've drawn it like this, because it goes onto this axis, and the shutdown causes you to move into almost like a second and even greater trauma vortex or spiral. And when that happens, we call it or refer to it commonly as immobilization or the fake death experience. And it is also known as dissociation, or that you just submit yourself and you actually say to the abuser, do with me whatever you want to. It's commonly known as the freeze response. Now, when you move into this trauma vortex, what are your symptoms? Most of these people are lethargic. They experience major depression. There are signs of hypotonicity. They have a body posture like this. There's somatization, body complaints, chronic pain, and of course poor digestion, which is also refers to the digestive tract, because when you move into this trauma vortex, it obviously has an effect on the viscera. So, to summarize the River of Life model, Levine states that when the sympathetic arousal reaches these levels, you are almost stuck on what he calls on, which is really referring to the emotional flooding. And when you experience yourself down here, then you are stuck on off. It's as if there's an electricity outage, and you have this lethargic behavior, the hypotonicity, and that you're not really responding. Of course, there are a mixture of these things, but I think it is enough to explain it like this. Now, how does this connect with Porges' polyvagal theory? Let me quickly go to his theory, and then we will come back and we can see how it interrelates with Peter Levine's theory. Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory. Porges refers to or explains it like this, that your autonomic nervous system has two branches, namely your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system, which I have explained earlier on. But interesting, as we said in this explication, that the autonomic nervous system has a second way out to prevent you from psychosis, prevent you to die or to become psychotic. On this axis of the parasympathetic, the vagus nerve plays a very important role. Now, the vagus nerve, for those of you that don't know that, is the longest nerve of the autonomic nervous system and of the body. It's also referred to as the 10th cranial nerve. And this vagus nerve, according to Porges, also has two sections or part. The back part, or the so-called dorsal vagal system, and the front part, or the frontal part, commonly referred to as the ventral vagal system. Let us quickly look at the dorsal and the ventral vagal systems of the vagus nerve. Interesting that the vagus nerve interfaces with the parasympathetic control of the heart, the lungs, and the digestive tract. Now, how does this happen? Let's first look at the dorsal vagal, which refers to the shutdown, the freeze response. And it immediately affects the brainstem. Interesting, we know that the moment there's threat to life and danger, to such a severe level as I've indicated here, it will immediately affect the brainstem. And what do we have in the brainstem? Well, the brainstem is really responsible for primal survivals, and when it is prolonged, this so-called shutdown, it would be lethal in mammals. But it is connected, the brainstem is connected very briefly, or the vagus nerve is connected to the brainstem. It goes down the spine and it connects with the heart, and it's also referred to as the wandering nerve, and it actually splits and it goes from the heart to the lungs, to the digestive tract, the viscera, and it also have a severe effect on your felt sense, your sensations, and it could also have an effect on your balance and eventually connects with the inner ear. Right, this is the oldest part of the vagus nerve, the dorsal vagal system, where the ventral vagal system is the more recent. And if I say recent, this is millions, hundreds of millions of years old, where the ventral vagal is the more recent part of the vagus nerve, which we find in mammals. And we refer to it as the social engagement system, the system that is responsible for attachment and attunement. What do we mean by attachment and attunement? Well, this part of the vagus nerve also comes all the way down the spine, connects with the heart, and then moves upwards into the neck and into the facial muscles, and has a profound effect on facial expression, and on your voice and your intonation, and on your gestures, and obviously on your posture. It's connected with the facial muscles and the muscles around the eyes, and as Stephen Porges has mentioned often, it could be seen, the muscles around the eyes. Trauma can really be recognized around the eyes, and we call these muscles the orbicularis oculi. And he has done some research in that area to explain that more. So this is just a brief summary of Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory in a nutshell. It's obviously more complicated than what I've explained here, but just to have a basic understanding of the two parts of the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve and the longest nerve in the body. So how does this connect with the theory by Peter Levine? Well, if we have to merge the two theories, we can say that when you are in your river of life, things go well, you have flow, self-efficacy, containment, coherence, integration, well-being, flexibility, attunement, and self-regulation. We can say that the ventral part of the vagus nerve has kicked in, allowing you to attune to other people, to connect with people, to socialize, and which obviously, as I referred, will show in the facial expression and the way you radiate your posture and gestures. Whereas, let me just get a pen here, and Porges so eloquently explains it in terms of a traffic light metaphor. And he says, when the light is green, then you are in your river of life, and the ventral vagal part or the ventral vagus system is kicked in. But when there's danger, the traffic light will be orange, or switch over into orange, which will refer to the mobilization, the activation, and the fight-flight response. And then when the traffic light turns red, it refers to a power outage or power failure or complex trauma, traumatic stress, and the freeze response, and there is complete shutdown. So that's more or less the explication of and the explanation of these two models. Something I just want to briefly refer to as well to make it more understandable is what we refer to, or what MacLean and Ledoux refer to as the triune brain. It's simplified, but it gives us a very easy understanding of the functioning of the brain. Now, I'm not an artist, but I've explained it briefly here. Let's start with the brain stem, which is really in this section of the neck and the body, between the neck and the head itself. The brain stem is also referred to as the reptilian brain. It represents your instincts, your reflexes. It has to do with your bodily reactions to threat, which obviously explains why it's so important and why it plays such an important role in trauma, especially in relation to the freeze response. It is connected to your heartbeat. It has an effect on your sleeping pattern, your eating pattern, your breathing. It will surely have an effect on your sensation or experience of sensation, what we refer to as your felt sense, and touch. That's why traumatized people will really, when you touch them, they will be, most of them are traumatized just by a slight touch. It also has something to do with movement in your motoric action, your balance. I've referred to your breathing. Your sexuality is represented in the brainstem, your digestion, your blood circulation, and very important, the brainstem obviously regulates the central nervous system and your temperature. And all these things, or a combination of these things, will be affected the moment when the dorsal vagal system kicks in. So we can actually refer to it like this. The moment there's threat and danger,